So in this video, I end up talking about unrelenting standards. I think I aim to talk about 3 different schemas, but I only end up talking about unrelenting standards. So unrelenting standards is that voice in your head that is always asking you what you're achieving, or it's aiming to meet high expectations or impossibly high expectations, perfectionism, etc. So I've become a lot better at identifying that in my life because I'm currently recovering from a workplace injury. So I'm supposed to be resting and recovering, and I still have that voice in my head asking me what I'm achieving and what I'm contributing to, and especially having had time off work, unfortunately that voice gets louder. And this schema, this internal pressure, it may have pushed me to accomplish things in my life, but it also pushed me to the point of exhaustion and isolation. And if I'm being honest, it did start breaking me down from the inside out. And what I try to get across in this video, which I don't think I do very successfully, is that the antidote, or one of the antidotes to this, is something termed radical acceptance. When I began to accept that rest was essential and not a failure, my dominant schemas began to loosen their grip. Research shows that practicing radical acceptance changes our brain's response to stress. The prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for rational thought and emotional regulation, becomes more active, helping us manage stress more effectively. And in contrast, the amygdala quietens down, meaning less anxiety and less fear. And unrelenting standards aren't all bad, so accepting them is a gentler way to allow them to live within you in some way. I realize that I'm always going to have a little bit of that in me. And so I'm learning that I want to live purposefully, and I want to be gentler with myself, and I want to achieve meaningful things. So I'm trying to focus my energy on being intentional with these things rather than intentionally trying to be perfect. Because if I do the latter, my amygdala is going to fire. So I'm going to be walking around with bundles of cortisol and not a lot of intention. This is where art was really helpful for me, because art is quite a mindful activity and you're not really achieving a lot. I'm sure people could argue that, and I certainly probably would argue that as well, but in relative to other things in your life, or relative to social standards, partaking in art making is not particularly productive. So that was a really good way for me to challenge my unrelenting standards. And it worked for me because I was still doing something. I wasn't just resting. What comes to mind here is the popular discussion of self-care and how difficult I find that. Have a long bath, have a bubble bath, go get your nails done. Things like that just do nothing for me. I find those really difficult to do because I do still feel like I'm doing nothing. So the art making process was so transformative for me because I was still doing something with my hands. I was still working towards some kind of goal, but it wasn't that intensity that I was used to in terms of goals and achievements and the standards that I set for myself and that perfectionist aspect. Also, art is a really good way of challenging perfection because you can never get anything perfect with a paintbrush. What I wanted to talk today about was schemas again. Schemas again. Yeah, so particularly my own schemas. So the three that are quite prominent, I mean, it's kind of like, it's so, they sound really depressing, but I'm not trying to depress anyone. So there's three. There's unrelenting standards, defectiveness, and subjugation. So I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna talk a little bit about those. I'm going to. Yes, actually, I don't. I just talk about unrelenting standards, and I don't really tie it into anything, but I do kick off with cognitive dissonance, which is interesting. So here we go. What we do to settle the cognitive dissonance that is created when we have a certain way of being and relating to the world, but we also have like a logic that tends to see things differently or to counter our instinctive way of relating. So when because I think most people will be able to relate to this. Like we often have instinctive sort of reactionary ways of relating to the world or relating to others, but we also have this kind of separate logic that tends to, like, we can see things clearly or more clearly, or we can take a different perspective if asked to, or if we want to delve into things. Like we're not just constantly emotionally reactive and we have no logic, is what I'm saying, right? That makes sense to, I think, everyone who's watching this would see that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that there is always going to be a level of cognitive dissonance, which cognitive dissonance is when we're holding two beliefs or two perspectives that are opposing, or where we act in a way that is not consistent with our belief system. We do something. Yeah, I could explain that better, but I think you might get the concept. So in order to that, we sort of play this mental gymnastics to try and rationalize, because cognitive dissonance is uncomfortable. So we're trying to ease that discomfort by either rationalizing or justifying or explaining away that particular act or reaction or decision that may be inconsistent with our deeper rooted values or beliefs or principles, or how we would ideally like to behave. And this is where, I think a way to describe it that's going to be really easy to understand is like when you do something, you react in a way that you're less proud of, right? And so that's uncomfortable. We're like, fuck, like I acted like an idiot. And so then you're like, okay, how can I ease that discomfort? You blame the other person. That's okay. If they didn't do that, they didn't say that to me or do that thing to me, I wouldn't have acted like an imbecile. So that then you feel better. Oh, I'm off the hook. That is kind of like a way that we amend cognitive dissonance. So that makes sense, I think. Anyway, what am I relating? I'm relating that to schemas in some way. Let me just try and gather my thoughts. Let's have some coffee. This will help. Okay, so I think I gathered my thoughts. Okay, so I'm just gonna start with unrelenting standards, because I think that kind of ties the impatience idea that I was kind of playing with in one of my earlier videos. So unrelenting standards is like a constant desire to achieve more, do more, meet impossibly high expectations of yourself. So yeah, this
this has been a big theme. And yeah, like when I was talking about the impatience and that kind of urge and how it can be molded into something positive, drive. So unrelenting standards has been a theme in my life because it is the thing that's driven me to achieve things. Without that constant sort of really aggressive voice in my head, like I wouldn't have been where I am today. Like I've got 2 degrees, 2 diplomas, 3 children. You know, worked full time, studied full time when I was having the children, raising the children. Just intense lifestyle, and then that aggressive voice doesn't actually go away when you achieve the things that you think you need to achieve. It doesn't go away, and that's when you realize that it's maladaptive. So despite everything, wanting to be the perfect mother, doing all this ridiculous crap, exhausting myself, still was intensely dissatisfied with myself and what I was doing, what I was achieving. I always needed to do more. I could always be more perfect. I could have reacted better and not yelled at my kids at that one moment in at night when everyone's exhausted. Like how can you know all this stuff about psychology and still yell at your children? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, this voice is aggressive. It's an aggressive voice that someone who experiences that, and it's really, really difficult to live with. I did not realize that was. I mean, I think I had a bit of an idea when I started to realize that no matter what I did, the voice didn't go away. There was a bit of that was a bit of a clue for me. But when I started doing schema work and that unrelenting standards one popped out as my most dominant, actually no, that's a lie, my second most dominant schema, it was like this light bulb moment where I was just like, that's not everyone's experience of life. That's like, what? So I wanted to tie that in with the impatience thing because, I did a bit of a rose-colored glasses view on impatience, like it's given me drive, like, yeah, it has, and there is an urge in me, and it is related to impatience. Also, this other aspect to it that is very damaging. So I wanted to note that because I don't want to be Miss Positive Psychology because I do think that we need to talk about the stuff that feels, the stuff that's painful, and I think that's important anyway. Some people might not agree with me, but I do think that's important. We need to hold space for when we feel like crap. That needs to be something that's okay. I've achieved things, yes, I have drive, but also because of that intensity, the drive, there is only so much that you can take of that, and then you can dip very much into the very apathetic. There's no point. There's no point because no matter what I do, I'm never going to be good enough. Or no matter what I achieve, I still feel this way. Still not hitting perfection. Why am I falling short of perfection? Because, Emma, no one's perfect, you idiot. But it can get very dark very quickly. I think it's important to hold those two things together because we need to be aware of when our patterns of thinking or when our deeply held beliefs about ourselves or others or the world can be damaging. And
So I failed to kind of tie these things together, but I wanted to do it. So unrelenting standards, as I've said, pushes us to constantly strive for perfection, and it's setting high expectations, impossibly high expectations, because we're none of us are perfect, and we're going to fall short of those standards. And that is when cognitive dissonance kicks in. It's a mental discomfort which is caused by that gap between who we are and who we feel we should be, This ongoing cycle creates a stress response, and that floods our body with cortisol, and that keeps us in a state of high alert. When cortisol levels remain elevated over time, the amygdala, which is the brain's fear center, stays active. This heightened state, this hypervigilant amygdala, actually in turn makes us even more prone to stress. Radical acceptance involves fully acknowledging our reality without judgment or resistance. This allows us to let go of the constant inner struggle to change or fix things immediately. This acceptance can have profound effects on our physiological stress response. Reducing mental resistance, radical acceptance lowers stress levels, which in turn decreases cortisol production. Studies show that acceptance-oriented therapies can lower stress-related hormones, helping bring the body back into balance. And as I think I've mentioned before, radical acceptance has been shown to activate the prefrontal cortex, which can calm down the amygdala, which is our brain's fear center. When the amygdala is less active, the brain shifts from a threat response to a safety response, making us less reactive and more able to cope calmly. Pairing this with art therapy or just engaging in a creative process, which involves repetitive rhythmic motions, engages the parasympathetic nervous system. And this system counteracts the stress response, slowing the heart rate and reducing blood pressure, which promotes a state of calm.
That didn't have a very good conclusion. Anyway, I'm sitting in front of my beautiful gallery wall. Isn't it lovely? I did it all myself. I did all the hanging, and I don't have a hammer, so I used a meat cleaver. But it's fine. It looks. I also don't have a level. Oh, no level. Yeah, this one's beautiful. I love this one. Lovely local Sydney artist. I've also got the original. I'll show you that later. But anyway, most apart from that one up there, all from the same artist. Anyway, that's funny. I'll link her. There's a funny story I want to tell. And if someone was looking in on that, how foreign it is to them, but how innate it feels to us. Gut feeling. I was like, go with your gut feeling. My gut feelings are just my perceptions, you know? That's big stuff, man. Cup of happiness. Cup of happiness. I don't always like to talk about psychology as an isolated, individualistic thing, right? Because we are products of our environment. We're social beings, so we're getting inputs and stimulus from people around us, groups around us, authority figures around us, social constructs around us, blah 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 blah. I wanted to mention our culture of busyness. A bit of a mess for people that have unrelenting standards. I don't know whether you guys have noticed this, but I certainly have. We glorify busyness. Oh, if someone's not stressed or busy, what the are they doing? It's like, hello, my name is Emma and I'm very stressed and busy and I need to leave in 5 minutes. Oh, that's nice, me too. How we interact with each other. What the it's not, it is not normal, but it's normal. You know, that's not the way that we're meant to be doing life. But we are, and, you know, it's really bizarre. It's really bizarre that that is where we're at right now in our current era. I think it's really bizarre. I think it's really bizarre, and I have unrelenting standards. But it's toxic, right? It's not good for us. It is not good for us to constantly be busy. And yes, unrelenting standards, amygdala, bing bing. Busyness, constant stress, amygdala, bing bing. So we've got these people walking around with these upregulated nervous systems, pumping with cortisol, and we're meant to be living healthy lives and connecting with people we care about. It's not going to happen. It's not happening. It's not happening. It's not happening when we're all stressed. No, it's not happening. However, that is what we're doing. So get a cat. Maybe that's what I was going to say. It wasn't what I was going to say. So while I'm configuring my thoughts, I'm going to put a candle on and eat some dates. Because they are two of my favourite things in the universe. I love the smell of fire. I think if I really embracing my trauma in a less adaptive way, I might have become an arsonist. Actually, no, I shouldn't say that. Anyway, this is my beautiful candle, and I love it so much. Brings me so much joy. That was retail therapy, which I haven't done an episode on, but anyway. So I'm going to tell you something that is probably not interesting, but me and my daughter painted this wall. Anyway, so how I picked my colour was that I decided that the reds were staying, so I got the red. I went to Bunnings, my favourite place on earth. Bunnings. I want to work at Bunnings. So if anyone watching has any pull on Bunnings, I would love to work there. Okay, anyway, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, so the red, I decided the red was staying. The red was going to be a feature, which is funny because I actually don't really like red that much. Or I don't know. It's so weird. Anyway, so I decided the red was staying. This is a pot that I from someone throwing it away. Yeah, so it's free pot. Anyway, so decided the red was staying. And so then what I did was I went to this really cool website. Not sponsored. That's funny because no one follows me. It's a joke. Okay, so anyway, I went to this really cool website called Coolers. And I put in red. And then I did the little like doodaddy kind of let's what is that word when you it's not a random color palette, right? It's so much fun actually. Just get on Coolers and just have fun, even if you're not going to paint your house. It's so much fun. And then I just did the random generator. Actually, I think I probably put in a few colors now that I think about it. I think I put in green, deep green, because I knew that I had lots of houseplants, and on my purple background for my gallery wall, in case anyone was wondering. My chair. How nice is this chair? Isn't it gorgeous? Someone was throwing that out as well. It's free. It's amazing. So yeah, I don't know, maybe someone should come with me and look in the tip. That could be fun. And how some people on YouTube, they go thrifting. We could go tipping. Not gambling. I don't believe in gambling. I mean, going to a tip. You never know what you're going to find. I did all that and I still don't know what I was going to say. I actually had quite a good sleep last night too, so I've got no excuse.